Paul, how are we doing with the minutes? We'll need to approve these as we kind of can't get too far out. Could we have them for, like, at least the older ones for next Monday's school committee meetings? We can approve them?
Actually, we got to approve them here.
We can't approve them?
Theoretically, well, theoretically should be, but that's.
And just, it's going to be hard to
What is
remember.
that? Does it matter?
Well, this is a committee, it's a committee of the whole meeting anyway.
Okay,
so.
all right. Okay. If you don't, we won't beat you, so don't worry about it.
Okay. I remind you.
Martha's going to stay in charge of the policy. So,
Okay.
Are we getting the TV phone here, or?
we're not going to be cable live tonight. We're cable taped.
Table ready.
We've been preempted by the space shuttle launch, and so we'll be taped and rebroadcast at a later time.
So do we have? I'm confused.
So who's taping?
Like,
Oh, I see.
as soon as Martha does a, you'll know.
Yeah, as soon as I get to find my section. You know, last night at 9 o'clock, I was very organized. You know, I got Beverly stuff. Safety program, first one?
Yes.
All right, I got it. Okay, I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. No gavel. Beverly is not with us tonight. She's at her 50th class reunion. Good for her. That's from grade school. No.
Sake.
Okay.
High school.
Nope. So I hope she's enjoying herself. Before we get started, she wanted me to bring up one thing. First and foremost, we must understand the difference between policy and procedure. Policy is rules and regulations, procedure is how-to and the implementing. Therefore, from our last session on May 18th, she lists all the sections. She feels as though, and actually I had thought about it also, that they should read regulations and not procedures. And I know in the medical world there is a difference also between regulations, policies, regulations, and procedures. Procedures is how you do it. Regulations is what you're doing. So I know Kate had wanted us to change the wording, but maybe we should give it some consideration.
Your view, James?
Why is everybody looking at me?
Because I think this comes to you.
Yeah.
Again, as I explained last time, the term regulation is the one that's been adopted by the National Education Policy Network, the codification system that we use. They use the term regulation that as we would use the word procedure. In Massachusetts, it does sometimes confuse people for us to call things in a policy manual a regulation, because we're so used to the Department of Education developing regulations that sometimes there is a misconception that this is, what's in the book is a DOE regulation versus a procedure developed to implement the policy. So when the suggestion was made to change the word regulation to procedures, in those particular documents we were looking at, they weren't DOE regulations. They were the how to implement piece. So that would have classified as a procedure. There will be times when we need to stay with the word regulation.
Okay.
In the sections that we've done so far, though, I can't think of one off the top of my head where that would apply.
Okay.
I know there's
guess
a number
what we need
in.
then is for you to be able to, when you're going through it, you know which ones to delineate as where they fall.
I'll be more than happy to identify
Okay,
those for you.
to identify those and just make the proper change, okay? Okay. Back to you.
All right, EB, safety program. Part of the Safe Schools Act that the,
I'm going to do dual duty, I read hers and mine, okay.
any comments?
Mike, you've had a chance to go through these as well?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been done, yep.
My only question for the committee would be, do we want to insert reference to alcohol and drug abuse prevention? We've spelled out a number of things there, and such as fire prevention, emergency procedures, traffic, bicycle, and pedestrian safety. Is it important to us to say alcohol and drug abuse prevention?
Well, we're talking about instructional program, and we do have instructional program around that, and we're talking about trying to expand that, so that would be very appropriate, I would think.
So where do you want to put it in?
Be that third paragraph, the practice of safety will also be considered a facet of the instructional program of the schools. I'd leave that up to Tim, the exact, if it comes before or after bicycle or pedestrian
That's
safety.
Jim.
That's Jim.
I'm sorry, Jim, I'm sorry,
I'm like,
Jim. I did that last time too, I apologize.
You must
Good
look
idea.
like someone else.
Is that appropriate for this one?
Sure.
Okay.
If it is part of the instructional program, because that's, as
Right.
Larry referred to, that's what this says, as well as alcohol and drug, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the phrase you were
I
talking about.
refer to it as alcohol and drug abuse prevention.
Okay, drug abuse prevention. Okay.
Mike, do you have any comments on the pest management plan?
No, we do. We have an approved one. We submitted electronically to the state. We upgraded electronically as we changed either use of a pesticide or so. We have everything we use registered with them. I have 2 licensed applicators who work for the Highway Department, Tree and Park. I have their names, I have their license numbers.
Okay.
I keep all of the records. I have a book. It's probably 4 inches thick now.
That was my
so
question, as far as the OSHA manual
I
and
have,
all, everything
I have
listed.
everything in there, and
Okay.
every time we do an application, if we're either a pesticide, mosquito control, I have to keep all the records and the
Okay.
notification that we sent home with the students.
Okay,
So,
all right.
I would just like to add here, under A, under overview and goals, where it talks about integrated pest management program, I think it should be very clear in compliance with federal and state EPA regulations. I think that should be, Mass did a great job in this policy. I think it should be specific, because that's how it's written, and there are regulations.
Yeah, but it's under, I think it falls under notification of pesticide and herbicide use. It says in the event of an EPA-registered pesticide or whatever. I don't know.
We had been using this policy, and I can't compliment Mike O'Leary enough. This form was very familiar to me because I get it repeatedly as a parent, so I'm glad that we are in fact complying, and I just think we should say that we're complying. It's the federal and state EPA regulations.
Even though the legal reference, the
It's
site,
in
that
there.
it says Chapter 85 of the Acts of 2000.
Well, that's
Is
the,
that-
that's the federal legislation that, well, actually, it was a state legislation that created the need for a school district to have a pest management program.
Okay.
Before that, it was kind of hit or miss across the board with districts. Notification wasn't being done. Pesticides were being applied while kids were still in schools.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's what that act
Okay.
particularly.
So that's not a, you want more than that, Kate.
I think
You
if this
actually-
is in compliance with federal and state regulations, then we should say that. If Mask's policy is not, then that's something that we would need to
This,
know.
well, this is that policy.
So,
But,
and it's based on those
Right.
regulations,
well, it's
correct?
based on that statute, yeah.
Mike, do you think it needs to be put in there?
Can't hurt, Phil.
let me put it this way. It has been approved by the state, our
Okay.
policy.
And so it's going to meet the
So,
guidelines?
and also, our pest control company has reviewed it for me.
Okay.
So their portion is, like I say, and again, we upgrade constantly with the state, so.
Yeah.
If they have a problem with it, I'm sure we would have heard about it.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to make sure that that we always adhere to that. Is
That's
that
correct.
Kate? Yeah, okay.
Because that's a question that parents ask when they
Yeah.
see the form, and we're
Right.
able to say that, and you do an
Okay.
excellent job in that regard, and I think we should be specific in our policy.
So where do you want to put it?
Just 1A. Yeah, 1A.
Yep.
ground maintenance safety, an existing Foxborough policy.
No problem with it?
Actually, I didn't think we needed this. This is the old Foxborough
Yeah.
policy, and I believe you have it covered very well under building and grounds later, right, Jim? Or did I miss that? Can we talk about
It's under
maintenance?
EC, so you probably don't need this.
Yeah, I didn't think I thought mask was,
All right, so why don't we eliminate this? Mike, okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
First aid,
One thing I think we should have in there, and I think we have to do it, is we should mention an incident report has to be filled out and sent to town hall.
On the first aid one?
If we administer, because of our insurance company,
Okay,
at least we require, if one of my people get hurt, even minor, if they go
Okay.
see the nurse, I make them fill out an incident report, and we send it up to town hall, just so they have a record for it, and we notify our
for
insurance
liability.
company.
All right, why don't we put it in after 6, because on 6 it refers to us notifying the superintendent, so put number 7 and forward a report to
Incident
town.
report,
Incident
right.
report, okay.
so we, the superintendent, will file an incident
Well,
report with the town?
actually, the person who gets hurt is
Yeah.
supposed
So-
to, with the
Just say
witness,
a completed incident
a
report.
completed
Yeah.
incident report.
How about under 5, you just say the teacher or the staff member responsible for the student will complete an incident
Yeah,
report?
but it's not just the student, he's
It's
talking
anyone.
about, it's
It's
about
anyone.
anybody.
See, I'm referring mostly
To
to
employees.
employees.
To
For the,
employees,
this,
yes.
Yeah,
workers' comp.
I don't know if
that
you
kind
want a
of thing.
second one for children and one for employees, but,
Oh, so that,
see,
then 7.
right.
All
I'm referring
accidents
to
Yeah,
through
all
OSHA must be
accidents.
our
reported.
people, and our
must be
insurance
reported.
company wants to know about it.
yeah.
So how would that read, Mike? What all,
Well, I guess you'd have to file, first of all, we have to file an incident report with our payroll personnel person.
Yep,
That's where we file it. They have it in our office, and then a copy is sent to town hall, to Andy Gala.
and that's not just for students, that's,
this is for everybody.
Primarily employees.
Primarily employees.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure what they do with students. I don't know if an incident report is filled
Well,
out
it
or
goes,
not.
it goes to the superintendent, and then
I'm not
Could you
sure.
put
media
that
goes to us.
underneath that third paragraph when we talk about a child or staff member? And then say a completed incident report will be filed for,
Why couldn't you just make it the end of 6, additionally, for
That's, yeah,
staff
that's what I'm saying, put
injuries?
it at the end.
but what about
but
students?
Paul's
You know,
saying that.
students don't do an
Students don't do an
accident.
incident
They don't do
I
it
Paul just said they do.
Yeah, we do.
They do.
But the incident report for a student doesn't get sent.
to the town
To
hall
the town
and
hall.
for insurance.
So we need
purposes.
2 separate items then to cover each one then, sounds like. You need to,
Yeah.
you need to do it for students, and you need to do it for staff.
I think we do it for students instead of
Really?
in cases of liability.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
so they're aware of it.
So let me take a stab at this. It would be number 7. An incident report will be filed
Which
with the town
department?
for all employees who receive
Town
first aid.
manager.
How about after where it says, all accidents to students and staff members are reported as soon as possible to the superintendent, and a written form will be filled out and sent to the superintendent's office, and then on to the town hall,
A completed incident report
completed.
will be filed.
Okay. And then put the last sentence in, if the superintendent deems appropriate to the school committee. Okay?
My only other question, the second paragraph, last sentence, or, I'm sorry, second to the last sentence. Well, actually, it's the first sentence, which enables the child to be taken safely home or to a physician. Shouldn't that read safely home, to a physician or hospital? Because don't we say under here that the principals, is at the next page, have the responsibility for making that determination? It said somewhere here.
Well, number 4, it says extreme emergency, school nurse, school physician, or physician may make arrangements for immediate hospitalization of
Right.
injured or
So it is
students.
covered under that. I think you're covering both scenarios.
Okay.
And the reason you can't include diagnosis and treatment is because of the HIPAA regulations, I'm sure.
Okay, so the only thing under 5, Jim, just I'm not sure the grammar's correct, where it says to whom a child is responsible. I know we're using student instead of child, but should that be for whom or just strike that? I'm not sure the grammar's correct there. It's for whom they are responsible, not for the child responsible. I'm not sure that grammar's correct.
All right. Emergency plans?
In the EQA report, they
Where,
talk,
excuse me, Deborah.
I'm sorry. If I may just keep my comments real short, I did notice it says call school physician in the first paragraph. Is that something that's done in the past 5 years? Done in first aid?
We have a school physician on staff, so if somebody didn't have a doctor or whatever, that's who they would call.
Okay, just a
No,
question.
that's a good
Yeah.
point. In this context,
Yeah,
it probably should read, instead of call emergency medical services,
yeah.
like call 911.
Yeah.
Just call 911.
You're not going
Yeah.
to call a school physician. In case, because it says in an accident or sudden
Yeah.
illness occurs, will first administer first aid and if warranted. If you, first aid, if you've done it and you need something else, you're not
Yeah.
calling a school physician, you
Yeah.
call. Is it referred to here as emergency medical services in town or?
EMS?
I would just
EMS?
Just call 911.
And in a similar vein, 2 other notes here. On number 2, it says, contact the parent and/or family physician immediately. I know the school still collects family physician phone numbers. Is that something that we do as well, as to contact the family physician from the school? My sense is that it would be a 911 call there too.
It's,
And then number 4 is an issue of wording, immediate hospitalization. I don't think any of us here, except maybe my husband, is credentialed to hospitalize anyone, so it would be for immediate transportation to a medical facility rather than to hospitalize.
where are you? Where are you?
Number 4, where it says hospitalization, it would be for immediate transportation rather than hospitalization, because you can go to the emergency room and not be hospitalized. And number 2, I'm sorry, I need 2 comments. Number 2 would be, it says, try to reach the family physician immediately, and that was under a similar vein with the initial question I had was, do we call family physicians if we're rendering first aid?
If a child's being transported, I think a courtesy call, I mean, if I have a patient in my office and I have a problem, I will call whoever their primary is and notify them there's a problem. So I think it's in that same vein. You're not calling them for advice or for treatment, you just notify them probably that the child is going to the
I
hospital.
think
It's
you're-
written as policy.
then you have to do it. And I think she's asking, do we do it? If we don't do it, then we shouldn't have it in
Well, if
here.
somebody's not here to answer it, we don't know.
Right, so I think that's just raising the question, we
I
ought to
can tell you that
verify
it has been
whether we really
done.
do it.
It's up to the
or-
nurse. For
or
instance,
put
my
there-
son had an allergic reaction. He was the nurse, based on what she
What they
saw and her, what's the word, her protocols,
Yeah.
she did alert the family physician. It's on the emergency card. So
If it's policy, then we need to require that it's done, is all I'm saying.
I think that's up to the discretion of that professional practitioner who is very prescribed protocols to follow.
And I think the and/or.
My concern here is that when you say that you will contact the parent or the family physician, then those are the 2 people. And if you call 911, that's neither of them.
Yeah, but I think
and
it
maybe
depends
we
on the
just-
situation, Andres. You
Yeah,
know, if
but-
it's an
but
emergency, I'm not
then let's
gonna,
define it in the policy broadly, like we will call appropriate medical attention, or for immediate hospitalization, call it for immediate medical disposition, as recommended by either EMS or whatever. And that way it's defined broadly, and the school has met it very easily, has met its policy very easily. If you say that you will contact the family physician, then you will not fulfill that policy until you reach that physician, and it may be very difficult to do.
Yeah, I think that there is some merit to, I think there's some merit to what you're saying, because, you're also talking about the context. When an illness or injury appears in any way serious, again, the focus is going to be on getting that individual immediate medical care. It's not necessarily going to be trying to rush to call the family physician. I mean, maybe it is in some circumstances, but maybe. Or you might want to put or may, or instead of and or, put the family physician, kind of, not in a way that has to be done, or otherwise we're not meeting the policy.
So where are we?
We've got to
We're
decide.
changing one word on, are we on number, are we
2,
still on-
let's stay with 2.
Two?
Every effort will be made to contact the parent, comma,
See, the intent here is not contact the parent for permission to do anything other than just to contact the parent to let
Right.
them
To
know
alert.
their child's injured.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of that statement, because the opening line says that the school can administer first aid if warranted, call 911.
Yeah.
So if the injury's beyond first aid, you pick up the phone. But then, in that case, an effort will be made to notify the parent, and I think it's and/or family physician in the case of somebody who might have severe allergies or self-administers medication or whatever the case might be, the parent may have on their emergency card family physician.
right.
So it's not for the treatment part of it as much as it is for the notification that the injury or the
It's taken place.
situation
Right.
has occurred.
So maybe the family physician may be notified. How about maybe? That gives them the leverage.
And/or.
But what if you just said, every
But-
effort we made to contact the parent and/or family physician to alert them of the situation?
That's good.
Because that's what you said the purpose of that is simply to alert them, not for anything else.
To notify.
Right.
It would be nice to maybe speak with a nurse on the staff to find out really what the protocol is and what they actually do, because I think, to me, that's still kind of a gray area. What do the nurses do when they've got this kind of situation?
Jeff, do you know?
Yeah, I would say, depending upon the situation, try to call the parents first, authorize that we may be taking or transporting a student to an emergency room or a hospital. If we can't notify them, then we go to the next, depending upon the diagnosis, we take them right there, and then still try to contact the parents. So those are the 2 steps, pretty much common steps that I know of anyway.
You know, unfortunately,
So
in this
is-
day and
is-
age where HMOs are included, God help you if you take them to the wrong place, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what's going on, because you could have a prime minister's that's not where I want to go.
Mhm.
I don't practice at that
Yeah.
hospital. So, it gets to be a real
Right.
contest after a while. So,
I mean, most of I'm could stand corrected. Most of that information is on the emergency
should- yeah,
card.
I'm
and
sure it
where to
is.
go as well, too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you
yeah.
can't get hospital treatment without knowing who your primary care physician is. That's always the first question you're asked. And it's part of their, Caritas, it's part of their network. Your primary care is also notified immediately, or else you're going to have an insurance problem. So I think we have that covered.
But then they raised the question in number 4, it's not immediate hospitalization, it's
Medical
immediate
care.
transportation to a hospital or immediate medical
Medical
disposition.
I'm sorry, I thought we had already changed that.
I think Larry's just reiterating it, that's all.
I didn't know that we had agreed to it, that's why I just wanted to make sure, because we went right back up to number 2
Right.
first.
So is there agreement to change that, number 4 then?
Sure.
And how should that be
Yeah.
changed?
For immediate medical disposition is fine with me.
Yeah,
That sounds
Immediate
good.
medical care.
yeah.
Before we turn the page, just one quick question, Jim, but, and also for the, is our practice on number 3 that we may send an older child home if the injury or illness is minor? That's my question.
High school student that drove themselves to school, if the parent gives them permission to go home.
You can go home.
Okay, but that's not what this says, so, they will not be sent home alone, or will be sent home unless approved by the parent? I mean, my son drove to school, but he doesn't drive to school, but if he did, and it was deemed minor, but I wasn't notified of that, and he has an accident on the way home,
Well, if he's under 18, he can't sign himself out of school, so you'd have to be notified.
so I would be notified.
You'd have to, they couldn't dismiss him without your permission. Once he's 18, you're not in the loop anymore, unfortunately.
No, I
They
get
can
that.
sign
I just-
themselves out and go home.
It seemed like that was unclear to me. on
Yeah,
the
they
screen.
just, you can't dismiss a student under 18 without the parent's permission.
But we may, but then what's the point of having an older child dismissed if their illness or injury is minor? What's the,
Migraine, stomachache, if you felt, you talked to your son or daughter and they convinced you that they'd be able to drive home, but they can't stay in school.
So it's no child under the age of 18 will be sent home alone or without
Without
notifying the
notification.
parents.
Right.
Yeah.
So couldn't we say that? Isn't that clearer to parents if they're reading our policy?
Older, you have to kind of come to your own deduction about what
Well,
older is.
the statement
Well,
here,
no, it's very specific.
No, but I'm
It
saying,
says-
just reading this, though.
but the pertinent
Yeah, it
statement
says
here
it.
is that no child who is ill or no young child will be sent home alone, period. Whether your parent gives you, whether you give, if there's no one home to receive them, they're not going. That's what that's
But
saying.
when you say the word older child, what does that mean? Over 18, over 16?
Younger.
That's, I think, what Katie's raised
Yeah.
is not clear.
That's up to you to decide.
So do we want to put an age in there?
Mr. Hardy, one question. When 3 o'clock or let out time comes in, how does this policy work? Like, a child has been injured, and now it's dismissal time.
Yep.
Do you still hold him until you complete this, or do you let him go because it's dismissal time?
No, you're holding. to
I would think you would still hold them because of the injury, or if you felt the illness was
Serious enough.
serious enough that,
Then the policy.
I mean, that's really kind of, that's a nurse's call.
Most times they get real well at 3.
Or 5 minutes off.
All right, so we've made the change at the top.
So just how will 3, what did we decide on 3?
You could say elementary or middle school child, and then,
Will be sent home
or
alone.
no, in the older child, unless the illness, you could say high school. If that's,
That's at least more specific.
Yeah, I think that's,
Could say no young child who is ill or injured will be sent home alone.
And the young will be
Or any
replaced
student under the
with,
age of 18 will be sent home without notification or approval by the parent. I mean, that's basically what
I
it is.
I like this, I think, you're going to have
It's
parents
very
that may.
clear as a
was it,
parent.
what'd you say?
No young child who is ill or injured will be sent home alone, nor any student under the age of 18 will be sent home without notification and approval by the parent. That's, because that's the protocol.
Right.
You-
A parent or emergency contact.
Contact.
Yeah.
Parent or emergency.
Can you give that again, if I gotta put this in the minutes?
You can't keep a door closed.
Under,
It says no young, number
It's a
3, no young
technical
child
thing,
who is
but
ill or injured
I
will
don't-
be sent home alone, comma, and then the change would be,
And I didn't know
Any
that.
student
Yeah.
under the age of 8, nor any student under the age of 18 will be sent home.
Because if it's closed,
without
someone may not realize the
notification
meeting's going on
And approval
and
by
not be-
parent
Not enter the meeting.
or emergency contact.
I said technically, we're not allowed to close the door in an open meeting.
Oh, yeah.
The door has to be left open, and I saw him close it, so I asked him to reopen. I know it's noisy, but
It's okay.
technically,
Okay.
Did I get that okay for you all?
I hope so.
on the emergency plans, the EQA report talks about the need for both district-wide plans and school-by-school plans. And they criticized us for lack of district plans, although we have the school plans. So this just is somewhat generic. It doesn't refer to district versus school. So how do you deal with that generally?
Well, I thought the emergency plans were set up by school,
But there's also supposed to be a district-wide one.
yeah.
the district one would be for disasters that affect the community. I don't know, fire rages through, burns half of the forest in town. The school's used for, the district one is usually developed with the police chief and the fire chief.
Right, that's what
You
the
know, like
case
natural disaster plan.
Like
Right.
staging areas and all that, too.
Right,
Yeah. You know, meteorite hits the middle of town and wipes out the common,
right.
something like that. You know, when would the schools be used for shelters, you know, like tornadoes, floods?
Right. And this is, because we didn't have one, and because we had cited for it, as we're looking at the policy, we ought to require in the policy that there's a district-wide one, as well as a,
Well, to meet the requirements of state law,
Yeah.
that's what the EQA cited, was that the
right,
the
but,
fire marshal's code of
something.
But again, anyone reading this, we ought to try to make it as specific as we can, as opposed to making them go look up the law.
Well, I think the second paragraph, the superintendent will develop and maintain plans that meet the requirements of state law for preparedness in case of fires, civil emergencies, and
I'm
natural
not sure we have that
disasters.
section.
This says they have to do it. Now, it's up to the superintendent and whoever else is involved to make sure that policy is in place. I don't think we write the policy. I think, am I wrong, Mike? You guys have to write this policy.
Well, my only point was, though, that if we didn't know, I didn't know that there was a district and a school plan.
Yeah.
So therefore, I could not have urged the superintendent to do something that I didn't know that they should do.
Yeah.
Whereas if the plan said that there must be both a district plan that covers A, B, and C, and school plans that cover D, E, and F, then I would have been able to ask the question, do we have both? Or I might have been able to ask the question if we had both, and we could have followed up on it. Because I think it's impractical to expect someone else to go look up the law to figure out what it is it's supposed to do. If by adding a sentence or two, we could make it clearer.
How about the superintendent will develop building-based emergency plans as well as a district-wide plan?
That's fine for
And
me.
maintain plans, blah, blah, blah.
That's fine for me,
Yeah.
Paul.
Could you say that again, Paul?
The superintendent will develop, which is in there, and then we'll
Yeah.
insert building-based emergency plans as well as a district-wide plan,
Yeah,
and maintain plans and so forth.
sounds good.
Can I ask a
I,
Well, I was just going to, can we say anything about, or do we need to say anything that that information will be presented to the school committee? Or that we will, or the fact that it's here and we've set the policy saying that the superintendent will do it? I mean, will we say that it will be reviewed? Can we say that?
Yeah, but it's not going to be something that's going to be in this manual. It's something that should be within the system and within each school.
No, but I mean just saying, and these policies will be reviewed such and such a period of time. Do we as a school committee want to impose that and put it in this?
That's not a policy, it's a plan.
Yeah, that's a plan.
Okay,
This is the
Okay.
policy that says they have to have the plan.
okay, all right, and
All right.
specific, all right.
And I think
Okay.
they're reviewed by police and fire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
Red Cross comes in. They've already
Yeah.
toured the buildings
Okay.
with me not too long ago.
okay.
There's just one other thing I'd like to insert, a third paragraph where it says building principals will meet all requirements for conducting fire drills. In this day and age, that's dated. It should be fire and emergency drills, because we just don't do fire, we do for all emergencies. I mean, the kids actually practice our lockdowns, so.
Is that appropriate, Jeff?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you need fire to say emergency, or do you have to say both? Either or.
Well, there's a pretty well-known requirement to conduct fire drills, so we'll say both.
So we'll say fire and emergency. Thank you for clarifying that.
Emergency closings.
Brilliant, brilliant. Let's go to the next page. I'm sorry. I think it's very,
Did I miss something?
no, I think it's very, it's very clear. I know why we have it. It's very clear to me, and I didn't put any red marks.
That's what she was telling me.
Oh. You okay with it?
Yep.
Should it be or designate?
Because it's not always been the superintendent.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing it, I didn't have to do it in terms of snow closings,
Right.
Yeah.
but I was the one that was supposed to,
And the year you did it, there were no closings.
absolutely.
You did your job very well.
Put that in, on designate.
Okay.
It was actually because Mr. O'Leary said, no, you can't close.
Yeah, I had a feeling there was, he was involved in
The
that.
sooner
he
we
was
can get,
smiling,
as soon as we can get the buildings closed, the sooner I can start cleaning them.
Yeah.
There will be no snow days.
Yeah.
Now I get it. Building and grounds management?
Mike, you have anything on it?
Mm,
You can live with it?
I can live with it.
Okay.
Building and grounds security.
I have two things. Very simple, the very last sentence. Employment of watchmen may be approved in situations. It's security personnel. And my question is, do we have an adequate key control system? Or is that something that we should, I know some of the buildings do, but do we have it in all buildings?
Well, Mike has
Yeah.
100
Yeah, that's
keys,
right.
you know, and part of the new.
No, well, yeah, inside the building. The
Yeah.
good thing is, this building was rekeyed outside, and the keys are numbered and can't be copied.
Yeah.
So, actually, Joe Heinricher issues the keys, records the number, who has it. When they leave, we get the key back again, so they're all numbered, and Joe issues them. So, you know, there may be keys inside the building, but as long as they can't get in the building, all the outside doors are on a master key, which cannot be copied. And the Ahern School is the same way, of course, that's newer, and that was all rekeyed on a master, so.
And that's electronic, isn't it? I mean, the
Well,
IGO
they
is
can, the
electronic.
teachers get in, yes. We don't have to issue keys to teachers, because they can get in with the electronic pass. But it doesn't work on weekends, and it doesn't work before 6:30 a.m., and it doesn't work after a certain hour at night, 5 p.m. So they can't get in the building. A teacher can't go in and get in the building on Saturday morning, all right? And if they did, it would set off the alarm. So our buildings are all alarmed, and just a select few have the codes to shut them off. So even if you had a key to the Taylor building, the minute you opened the door or went down the corridor, we get an alarm. So you can get in the building, but you can't walk around.
Yeah. I didn't even think that meant, I thought adequate key control system meant electronic. I forgot about the 100 keys at the high school.
Right.
A question for you, Mike, for us as a committee. At some point, we probably, in our capital needs, want to address an electronic key system like we have at IGO. As we look to put more systems in place.
The Ahern's the only one.
The Ahern,
That
yes,
has
the Ahern and the
electronic.
IGO. At some point, that's something, and again, Mike, I would have you lead us in terms of your recommendation. How important is that, given everything else that we need, but when we go to do it, that's probably what we should do.
The only importance of it would be, see, the Ahern building, we keep the doors locked, all the doors locked, all the time. At the IGO, we have to open the back door to let teachers in. As soon as students are in the building, we lock down all the building. Same at the high school. The Ahern, we don't have to do that. The doors remain locked all the time, and the teachers let themselves in. Then we open the doors as the school buses show up, let the teachers in, doors are closed immediately. So that's the advantage of it, is we don't have to open doors. See, here at the high school, though, students come in a lot earlier. Mr. Massey, 6:30 in the morning, he brings students in, and so somebody would have to let the students in. See, at the middle school, they sit in the school bus until, 5 minutes of 8, doors are open, they're in, doors are closed. But here at the high school, there's so many programs, they go to the weight room early in the morning. Again, Mr. Massey will have something, the drama may have an early production. So it's harder to control here at the high school, but.
Thank you for that input. If I may just add, it is not just for security purposes, but again, in terms of our long-term capital planning. At some point, we may want more of an electronic key system for not just the security for students, but also in terms of staff access. There is not a company today that doesn't have an electronic key system that is linked to payroll. Okay,
Okay, but you
and
know what? That's more of a
something-
conversation
not for
school
policy,
committee, not
but
for
I would,
policy.
but this is where, because I would like to be able to bring it up again, where we talk
What
about
have you
it.
thought, Ben?
I got it there.
Did you want Watchman changed to security personnel?
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good.
that's
My
an old
great
term.
grandfather was a watchman. We don't want to offend any female security personnel officers.
You could put watch person.
No, security personnel.
Misuse or damage to school property?
You've got some typos in the third bullet.
I yellowed those too.
But this was the old one. This
the
was ours.
first one.
I know it.
I know, but they must have retyped ours, well, I'm sure we didn't have those.
In addition, that line. Denied participation should be activities,
Yeah.
including but not limited to. What is that word supposed to be?
Suspension
Okay.
of the right to attend.
Right.
I don't know. I would say
Yeah, a second.
expulsion? Suspension. I think it's suspension.
Comma, temporary suspension.
Temporary suspension of the right to attend classes.
in that first bullet, any person found to be responsible for damaging or vandalizing school property will be dealt with in an appropriate disciplinary manner by the school administration. I guess if we're going to have zero tolerance policies we've talked about in the past, shouldn't there also be reference to in there?
Police department.
Legal, police, whatever.
How about and police department?
And/or, please?
And/or, because, you know, we have a student
You'd have
break a
somebody
window,
roll them.
you know, he gets mad, he punches a window. Well, guess what? I replace the window, I give Joe Heinrich the bill, he hands it to the parent. You owe us $250. We don't have to call the police in, we don't have to do any of that. It's just, you know, occasionally a student will get mad and kick a glass. If we know who it is, we send the parent the bill, or we send the student the bill, and they have to reimburse the school.
The reason why I wanted something added there is last year, we had kids get in the school, they did a thing with the tree and everything else, and while there may not have necessarily been a lot of damage, we might want to prosecute for trespass, so that's why I wanted.
Oh, breaking and entering, absolutely.
Now, Jim, one of the things that we have, Mask has a vandalism. We call it misuse or damage to school property.
Right.
I like the way the vandalism is written by Mask, but I would add some other things. For instance, it's not just vandalize. I would use our old title, which is misuse of or damage to school property. I like our intro statement in the Foxborough policy where it says the citizens of Foxborough have made a substantial investment in public property. I mean, I like that. There's one sentence we would delete. The proper care and maintenance of this property is essential, because we've already covered that. But that paragraph, I would love to see in the Mask, in that.
The whole paragraph?
Yeah.
Other than that middle sentence you said you wanted to strike?
Yes. The whole paragraph.
Are you combining these two?
Yes, that's what I'm suggesting, okay?
So-
I'm suggesting that we go with the Mask vandalism policy, but that we change it
title.
to misuse
Yep.
of or damage to school property. I would use that first paragraph minus the sentence that says, "The proper care and maintenance of this property is essential in order to fulfill the expectations which are associated with the purposes for which it was intended." That's gone. Then just misuse of or damage to property through willful neglect or acts of vandalism will not be tolerated. Will not be tolerated, period. I don't know if
Okay.
we need an acceptable social behavior in disregard for value. That's kind
So
of-
then it would, the next paragraph, the school committee recognizes the acts of vandalism committed.
Well, yeah, I like that. I would just say my suggestion would be in the mask policy, somewhere in the third paragraph, at the end where it says, "We may have the authority to sign such complaints and to press charges." I think you need to just refer to the discipline cycle if it's. I mean, in essence, if we're, at some point, we have a discipline policy. I don't think we have to spell out all of the steps within discipline. We just say that we will adhere to the appropriate steps in discipline and define that broadly.
Yeah, but
Well,
if
I
you-
like that. I like
no,
it
I
all
like it here
itemized
because
here. I would want
this
that
has to do with
incorporated.
our policy. The handbook is a separate issue.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it's
because
spelled
what
out,
if-
I'd rather have it both places.
That's
And the
fine.
handbook is for the high school. What
Right.
about the middle school?
Yeah.
But I think it's you spell out discipline in the broadest possible sense, and it's not just student here, it's any person. It's staff or student.
Yeah, it says any person.
Misuse
Yeah.
or vandalism of school
It
property.
says against any perpetrator.
Yeah.
Why don't you take the 3 paragraphs from vandalism and insert them after the first paragraph on misuse?
Yeah, and then go
And-
down
Then
through
go
this.
down, yeah.
And then leave the rest of it and scratch, don't use the last sentence on vandalism.
Yeah.
So take those first 3 and just insert.
See, for me, and I like that idea, Paul, but then we talk about any person, but then we're only addressing these, well, a senior student, a first offender. I think you need to give a broader scope, because it's any person, and we're saying any person found to be responsible for damaging or vandalizing school property will be dealt with.
But it says that in the first
Yeah.
bullet.
Right, but the
I'm
fourth
not
bullet
sure we
talking
need-
about commencement activities.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be an adult. If you created a problem, that's not, you violate, you vandal the school, so you don't go to graduation.
again, I believe we're covered under the appropriate disciplinary manner by school administration
For students?
for students. I mean, do you,
I'm not sure, I was
I don't
gonna ask the
think we are.
question, so, first offenders will be denied participation in activities, so if someone deliberately breaks a window and they're caught, are we saying that we're mandated to, include but not limited, to suspend the student?
One of the things we talked about at the last meeting, Jan had indicated that under the rules, a principal has a wide level of authority and that we can't circumvent that. Therefore, we could have that the principal could provide penalties up to and including, but the decision whether he does A, B, C, or D is the principal's, not the school committee. So we have to be consistent here as well.
And
We
I
can't
don't
tie your
care.
hands.
Well, it would make it sometimes easier to say that's the policy,
Right.
there's no fooling with it, so it takes any kind of judgment out, which sometimes, might seem severe, but, and I asked the question, so.
Yeah. I guess the concern I would have is if, from a legal standpoint, we prescribe what you have to do, and then someone sues us and it's thrown out because we're not allowed to do that, then we've created a problem for ourselves. If we're allowed to do that, then I don't have a problem us collectively prescribing it and putting it in there so it's easier for you. So you're not accused of you were a favorite with Jenny, but you didn't do the same thing for Bobby.
Right,
kind
and
of
it would
thing.
reflect in the handbook, was the
Right.
purpose of it.
But I think
Right.
that's been part of the problem, is that it hasn't been, for me anyway, been clear. And again, this is getting off track here, but it does pertain as we are going through these policies, is where our jurisdiction is and where it isn't. So I think that's something that we need to collectively understand before we start saying, well, okay, if somebody does do this, we want them to be suspended. Because it sounds like we don't really know.
Well,
That's
Jim,
that
I think
authority.
when you and I were talking one day about zero tolerance for alcohol, weren't you saying that there was a policy and the town got sued because the principal
Yeah,
needed to
well,
make that decision?
In that case, we're looking at a very specific subject matter in that,
Okay.
under the 7137H, which is the expulsion component, the law gives the principal the discretion to suspend rather than expel.
Okay.
And the school committee adopted a policy that if you're drinking and you're caught at a school activity, you'll be expelled. Zero tolerance. And that was the argument was because the law gave the principal discretion to suspend, yet the school committee policy took away that discretion.
Okay.
So, in the case of vandalism, there is no statute that says anything about, other than you can go back and get restitution.
Okay.
And the parents would be responsible for the damage done by their minor child. I guess the debate here is this something that is in the handbook? If it's in the handbook, we want to make sure if you're going to put it in the policy book, it's got to be the exact same language that's in the handbook.
Right.
Is it in there, Jeff?
I don't know.
I don't remember seeing.
I don't know how it's worded, it might be under a broader category. I mean, I know vandalism is in there.
Maybe we should
Yeah.
just tag this one and then
Yeah,
next week,
I think
make
so.
sure we compare the two.
I like the idea of trying to tie it in and maybe think about putting it in the student handbook, in the fact that, it sends a message to seniors that if they do something for a quarter, even though they're walking out the door, there is some consequence. And
Right.
I think you have to put some teeth in that.
Some of the stuff here, individual who's responsible for such act, it's the second to the last bullet. And it will be readmitted only after making an appearance along with the parent or guardian before the Foxborough School Committee.
yeah, see, 3, 4, and 5 are really no longer relevant. I don't think
I'm not sure that that's.
Probably can't do that.
Well, first of
Yeah.
all, how do you do that? Well, you have to do that in executive session because it's a student discipline issue, so what's the point?
Yeah.
If you're going to do it in executive session, the only reason you bring it before the school committee was for everyone to see, oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and,
To make a public display
yeah,
of it, and that's not
and you
appropriate
couldn't
either.
do that with a student anyway,
All right,
so.
so why don't we take out that one? All right?
And it's a couple of times, repeated acts after an appearance before the school committee will be reported. Obviously, if you're not going to have the appearance before the school
It's going to
committee,
get
you'd have
reported
to.
anyways.
So the last two would have to, or probably should go away anyway.
Yeah.
The first bullet, really, there's no problem with. Second bullet, again, you're holding the parents or guardians responsible for
Right.
making restitution.
Yeah.
Failure to come to an agreement or a restitution plan, we'll turn it over to the proper authorities. There's really no problem with that either. The first offenders will be denied participation now.
That's good.
How does that fit with, if you say denied participation in activities? What do you mean by activities?
Yeah.
Is it clubs, is it athletics, is it, what is it? What's the general perception of
Why
what?
don't you check and see what the handbook says?
And is that constant with other first
Yeah.
offenses for other violations of the code of conduct?
Okay.
And then,
We had that conversation too about activities. Is that inclusive of viewing an event? Does that mean you don't go to the plays, the athletic events, et cetera? And now you kind of extend
The way this is written, this would also apply to a preschool child.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then the senior student piece,
That's probably something you
that's
should
probably
think about
nowhere
putting-
else. That's probably nowhere else.
Yeah.
That's
So if
probably
you
not.
don't have it in the handbook, how can you,
Well, then it's still district policy. But if
Yeah.
you're going to keep it in the policy book, then I would suggest you add it to the handbook.
right, so you want to look into that too?
Can I make a suggestion, since I got us into this, that might be a fix? We agreed to change the title and use the
Yep.
first paragraph. We're going to use the first, maybe the second bullet. 3, 4, 5, 6, and even 7 is redundant and outdated. But if you, and I think, Paul, you were making the suggestion, if on the third paragraph where it begins the superintendent, you could put there, the bullet, any person found to be responsible. You could even put the second bullet, the individuals will be held responsible. And it's giving the superintendent the full broad authority to deal with this situation. Is it not? And isn't that what we want? One of the things we've learned is we want to be specific wherever we can, but if we spell it out to such specificity, it's not going to be a living document, or it'll be out of date. I'd be very comfortable having the superintendent and the building principal administer the discipline strongly, but within the parameters.
So you're talking about taking the first two bullets? Does that include the failure to come to an agreement?
I don't think you need that, because mask is
Okay.
stronger. It says right here that we're going to, parents and students will be made aware of legal implications involved. Reimbursement will be sought for all or part of any damages. I think that's very specific
Okay.
and clear to parents.
And
Well,
then
no,
takes
I
it-
think that's different, though, saying they're putting a specificity, you know what I mean, 20 days there, it's saying. I mean, they're saying 20 school days. That's more specific than, it's a different kind, but it's.
But that specificity doesn't help the situation. If you look at how if you had an instant now, take that last incident.
Yeah.
Chief O'Leary wouldn't be waiting 20 days to have a conversation with parents. Okay, that's what I'm saying. The policy is outdated.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a case where the specificity is not really.
I think we need to have the handbook. I don't feel comfortable making a decision about this unless I know what the handbook says about vandalism. I don't see how we can,
Well, I can certainly go grab it.
Go ahead.
Your call.
Go ahead. We'll go on to another one.
I would toss in that I could take the 20 days out only from the standpoint that somebody's got to make a decision what the severity of it is. And this says you're going to wait 20 days to cut a deal.
I'm sorry, I said
It might be no deal is going to get
Because I
cut, we're
need to see
going
the
right to the
handbook before we
authorities.
decide about vandalism.
The other thing too would be 20 days. If something happens on the third to the last day of school.
Yeah, that's true. How do you
Yeah.
have
I don't. That's why I don't think
Okay.
for
And some of this is going to be
3, 4,
judgment
5,
call.
6, and 7 are.
Okay.
I think Mask wrote it better.
And you don't think Foxborough in 87 wrote it better?
So why don't we just do away with this and just use the mask one?
I think
I don't
the
think,
Mask.
seriously,
my
I don't think
suggestion,
you need the
Martha,
fluff in the beginning anyways.
But I think it's nice to say that the citizens of Foxborough have made a substantial investment in public property.
But I don't know
What
if
a
you need that written in the policy.
That's,
I think
that's
it's
fine.
fluff.
It was just,
Sorry, but First of all, anybody who reads that isn't going to read any farther. I think if you're going to write a policy, make a statement and move on.
All right, let's move ahead. Who's getting the handbook?
Speaking of that, let's move on.
Authorize use
Authorize
of
use-
school-owned materials?
Yep. The department, the group that, it's not Department of Revenue, I don't believe, but it's the group that administers GASB 34, which is the governmental something stands for. It's like you had to go and inventory everything that's ever been bought by public dollars. Their position has always been that without policy allowing it to happen, nobody can borrow school-owned or publicly owned materials. So unless you put something in place that would allow a teacher to take a laptop home on vacation to work on a project, school-related, there's no way the teacher can take a laptop. Or a student could borrow a piece of equipment for a school project.
We've had
Check it
the
out the
art
building.
department allow people to take computers home. We talked about that at the public meeting one night.
And
And
that's
then there was
why,
a question raised about security.
yeah.
Can
I'm all
we,
for
can
the
we do
policy.
this, though, and put superintendent or business manager, because sometimes the superintendent's not available.
Or just say designate.
Yeah, or designate, okay.
I'm very happy to have this policy. I think we do need it. In the second paragraph, though, at the end, where it says the last word, extracurricular activities, I think you need to say, and has been approved by the building principal and/or superintendent. Because we had a situation where computers, all for all the right reasons, were lent to a student. And I think the building principal, who is responsible for that inventory, needs to be involved in this. And no materials should be, or equipment should be removed
Yeah,
from
but I
school
think that's,
property without
when you
the...
put superintendent or designee, I think that covers school principals.
Kate, is your question to make sure the teacher tells the principal and not just does it on their own?
Yeah. Exactly. Where does it say,
We inserted it after.
proper
maybe
controls will be
granted.
established by the superintendent to ensure the user's responsibility for and return of all school equipment. Does that mean that the building principal is being asked for approval of that?
It's a pretty easy thing to add on
Yeah.
to that. Just say
I'm
with the
sorry, that
approval of
shouldn't
the
even come to
principal.
the superintendent, it should come to the building, it shouldn't be done without the building principal's approval.
Okay.
And the building principal would notify the superintendent.
Okay.
Okay, put it in.
So at the end of the second paragraph, we're adding an approved by building principal.
Yeah.
Do we need to say building?
What?
Do we need to say building?
Well, because we have, no, we don't.
Say principal?
Just principal. Jeff, where in here can you find that?
41.
41.
There's a series of conditions that
Vandalism and property.
So this last,
That's
does
all.
prohibit it from class
Yeah.
night, senior reception, graduation. All may be denied.
So if it's in there, we can put it in the other one.
Do you need to put it in if it's here?
I'm not sure you need to put it in, I think you just need to reference that we will follow the discipline. I don't think you need to spell it out that specifically.
Well, if you put it in here, how many handbooks do you have in the district? This is the high school
5.
one. Do we know if the language in the middle school or the elementary schools is identical to this?
That's why I think you should
Yeah.
keep it broad and strategic, and because we have a discipline protocol that we follow, and I think you should allude to that.
Yeah, but is there a handbook at the middle school? Is there a
Yes.
handbook at the elementary?
Yes.
Okay. Is it in those handbooks?
It is in the perm. I can't give you the words, but I know I had a sign for it. So I did check that one out. I can't recall the old one.
How about if we just put as referred to in the handbooks?
In each school's handbook?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, but you got me so confused, I don't know what the end result is here.
I think I have it.
Are we gonna go with MASCs?
Yeah,
If you look at
yeah,
the MASC policy as is,
yeah.
and then adding the first paragraph of the Foxborough, well, you're going to use the Foxborough title, but add the first paragraph minus the second sentence.
Well,
And
can I
that will
just
become-
interrupt you?
yeah.
If we're gonna use this, and this says vandalism and theft, shouldn't we not call it misuse or damage? Shouldn't we be consistent with what we're gonna call it here?
No, because we're doing both, Larry. We have misuse of school property. We could have damage to school
Well, where's the-
property
okay,
that
so
is
wh-
or is not vandalism.
Right, but where is the disciplinary on misuse then?
Okay? I think what we want to say is, anytime there is misuse or damage to school property, and in addition, under our policy, we're also going to mention vandalism. I think this is, we want to be as succinct as possible, but we want to be broad. I don't think you want to spell out 5 different ways of handling misuse, damage, or vandalism per the 5 buildings, because it's up to the discretion, or that would be under the parameters, the building principal would be handling those matters.
See, misuse or damage is vandalism. I like one word instead of,
Whatever.
I mean, if we're gonna try to be consistent with what's in the
Yeah.
handbook, then we ought to be consistent
yeah, because they're not gonna find misuse
in the handbook.
in the handbook.
And I'll go back and I agree with what Katie said. We should wait until we need then to see how it appears in the other 4 handbooks, if we're going to be that. And that's okay, but I want to know how that appears in the 4 other
Can you,
handbooks.
all right, let's do this. Can you somehow in your spare time,
9:30 tonight.
yeah,
All right, we're moving on then, we're gonna put this one on hold then.
So you want
we're not putting it on hold. We're
Copies of
gonna
the
have one,
elementary.
see what the wording is. If it says vandalism, then use vandalism.
We get a second look at them when they're all rewritten
Yeah.
anyway, so
Yeah.
let them do the
I
best they
just
can.
need to
and bring
know
it
what
back
to
us.
put, what to do.
All right, do you
as
have
far
the,
as-
you must have the handbooks for all the schools.
I do.
Okay, so can you look at it instead of torturing him?
And we'll put a little
see what it
star.
says? It's just that he's got budget stuff.
Sorry, Jim, you're taking one for the team. We're going to torture you.
Right now, you're
I have
torturing
broad
me.
shoulders.
But are we basically going with the MASC
Yes,
policy?
yes, we are.
And with nothing from the Foxborough policy?
Right.
No. Well,
Well, the first sentence of it.
no?
Three.
We've
I
done it so many
don't,
times, it's not clear to me. I'm sorry. Martha just said we would do it. We just use masks. And that's what
I just
everyone
don't,
says.
I just don't think you need the fluff, I really don't. I just,
While you're all thinking through
All
it,
right.
we paid them in full?
No.
Just thinking for the budget purposes, did you?
It's encumbered,
It is encumbered, okay. Promise to be paid?
assuming a
I
satisfactory.
just
I
wanted
mean,
to-
we're authorized to torture him.
Well, no, it
If
just,
we
it
keep
just
it up,
dawned
we're gonna
on me
have to give him a
that
bonus.
we had talked at one point about whether we're gonna pay him partly this year, partly next year, and I was just, since we're getting close to the end of the fiscal year, I wanted to make sure we were
Okay.
doing it right. Because we had agreed to fund it all in
Out of
the
this
current
year, so
fiscal year,
it
so
should be
that was my only point, off topic.
all right.
Okay, so we're up to use of Foxborough school buses?
Yes.
I don't think we need this one, because I think you have it under student mask. I think did a very good job with this, and there's so many of them that you've broken out.
I don't think we should ever put dollar numbers in here, because they change on a regular
Right.
basis. so.
But if you look what mask, or well, then we have student transportation, that's Foxborough too. But might I suggest, to make it easier, we start with the mask, or we?
Yeah, I
Which
think
one?
so, the school transportation.
So EEA, Student Transportation
Right. Yeah.
Services? Is that the one?
Yes.
Right. Now, here, isn't student transportation under the business manager as opposed to the superintendent? Does that make a difference to us?
First of all, I think it should fall under, what's the title of the bus person that oversees the, what's the title?
Well,
The woman that runs the buses?
let me
Yeah.
interrupt both of you.
Transportation
No, wait a
manager.
minute. What is it, transportation manager? Okay.
Okay. The only problem is we don't contract for services,
Yeah.
we have our own fleet, so we've got to customize that.
Okay.
Mask is a good, but but it doesn't apply to us because we don't contract. We contract for some transportation services for special ed, but we
But the
have our own
bus drivers
fleet.
are all employees of
Right.
Foxborough
Right.
schools, and you own
So-
all the buses.
There are some things under the old policy with the mask update that we may want if we, I think there's a way Jim, that you could merge the old Foxborough student transportation
EEA?
with EEA with the mask EEA.
Let's take a look here.
Okay, the only, it talks about eligibility.
Yep.
It talks about, it spells out bus routes and stops, administration of the program. We can add superintendent of schools or their designee. It talks about the responsibility of our bus drivers, and we have, they are our employees, so I think we do have to spell out part of that.
But just to interrupt, our EEA is all about contracting.
Okay, just contracted services.
It's,
So it doesn't really
it
apply
doesn't
to
really
this.
apply to your
So
situation.
we then still need, though, the student transportation under the Foxborough.
Yes.
Okay, so we do
All right,
need
so
that.
we don't need the one from Mass, no. So put a big X through that. Now,
Well, do we still need it, though? Do we still need masks? Because there are times when we contract for transportation services under special ed. So do we need, or are we covered by contracted transportation services just by our own policy? See, I think there has to be a merge.
Is everybody who lives more than a mile assigned to a bus? K through 12?
all right, listen, before we go any farther with this, on the student transportation, this has been my pet whatever for the past 9 years. Under eligibility, all kindergarten pupils and pupils in grades 1 through 12 who live more than a mile from the school assigned will be entitled to transportation privileges. I want put in here, or if a safety issue is raised and will be assessed by, that's why I wanted to know the name, the transportation, what'd you say it was, Paul?
Transportation manager.
Transportation manager or business manager. In other words, to go out and assess whether or not there's a safety concern, and if that child's under a mile, to be bused. If you're gonna change it, let's change it now.
Could you say that again, Martha?
I said, after, or if a safety issue is raised, it will be assessed by the transportation manager? Why do I have a problem with that? Transportation manager or business manager for bus privileges.
But isn't it with Paul, isn't it with the business administrator and Chief O'Leary? That's how we do it
No,
currently?
that,
We've involved the police also to document the safety
the
issues.
person who runs our, who oversees our buses, they know the roads in town.
That's him.
Him, but the transportation person. In other words, if that person can't solve it, then it goes to the business manager. Let's have a little chain of command here. I don't think it has to go to the superintendent first, okay? So in other words, whoever's in charge of our bus routes, and there's a safety issue that's raised by a parent, okay? It should go to that person first, and then if he or she doesn't resolve it, then it goes to the business manager. If the parents are still upset, then certainly they can go to the superintendent of the school committee. But I think we've got to have a chain of command
So
here.
you could say special education or supplementary.
Yes.
And I'd actually spoken to Chris about this, and he was in favor of us
Sports teams,
making sure that safety was a big issue. Yes?
Regan students, if we had.
Smile?
And two things.
Yeah.
How about if I get together with Jim and we rewrite something by combining all of
Okay,
this,
do it,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And take care of it.
I think it's too much for us to,
Yes, and
Yeah.
we'll come back with a new one that will encompass a bunch of these. And then in terms of the safety,
yeah.
I was once asked, what are your credentials to make a determination as to whether this is safe or not? And I had to say, I don't have any credentials. So,
Other than common sense, yes.
so my recommendation, so the practice that I followed in the past was that if a parent raised an issue of safety, I picked the phone up, called the police chief or whoever it
Okay.
was in the police
All
department,
right, so
and the
into-
two of us went out,
Yeah.
assessed the situation, and I weighed in with my 2 cents, and then ultimately the chief or the designee said yes or no, and that was
Okay.
the way we did it.
All right,
I agree.
okay.
May I just say one thing on that, Paul? Under the bus routes and stops, where it says like at noon, separate transportation will provide, that sentence would be eliminated.
Where are you?
Under bus routes and stops, that last sentence, at noon, because that's going to be changing. I know you're going to update this
Well,
under student transportation.
Bus routes and-
this is what we do.
I know, but it's going to be, that, you're going to update that, and that's, won't that be changing?
What?
May I suggest that we may have full-day kindergarten very soon?
That's why we're gonna
So we're
review
gonna
these
update it.
policies every year.
And the
It won't be in the next 12 months.
No, and kindergarten won't be in the next 12 months, so this needs to stay now.
So that will stay, and you'll update that. One thing that caught me also was under the responsibility of bus drivers, the one thing that's out of date where it says the driver is responsible for inspecting his or her vehicle before starting, it is also and at the conclusion of their route, because that's been a sticking point for us, and I believe that was even made part of the contract.
Is that in the contract, Paul? They have to check the bus before and after
Yes.
for maintenance?
No,
No,
to make sure
for
there's no
students
child on
only.
the bus.
And that's one of the
You
things that
don't
was
have to
added
put
in
up
the
an empty
contract.
sign or something?
Yeah, so we want to make sure we include that.
So before starting and finishing.
I saw a bus following a bus in a different town. In a
Thank
different
you.
town.
Thank you.
On the back of the bus, it said, "This bus is empty." I'm looking at about 40 kids on the bus, because
Do
they're
you think one of
going
the kids
off.
flipped it, or
No,
just
it's,
did?
I don't know, the kids might have flipped it around, I don't know. It's just kind of, this bus is empty.
And you're like, am I
I
blind?
don't think so.
Did you hear about the poor man in the wheelchair?
Yes.
They got stuck on the front of a truck, and the truck drove for 4 miles, up to 50 miles an hour, with the guy's wheelchair stuck into the front of his
Get outta here.
truck.
Yes. And he
And
was
people were
unhurt.
calling 911, finally the police pulled him over. The guy was fine, his wheelchair was a little bit damaged, but he said he was fine, 50 miles an hour on the front of it. The trucker didn't see him, and he got stuck, the arm
Got
got
in
stuck
the
into the grill.
Were the wheels still on the ground?
The wheels were still going, like burning rubber.
I don't know that they're designed to go 50 miles an hour. I can see those little front wheels going.
Well, the man was wearing a
Seatbelt, thank
seatbelt.
God.
Oh, my God.
He was
Well,
as
the good
calm
thing the
as-
handles were stuck in
He
the
was as
grill.
calm as could be when they stopped him.
There's a safety device that we actually talked about that's being sold, that a driver can't shut the bus off until they go to the back of the bus and flip a switch, so that it forces them
To go
to
back.
check
To
the
go all the
bus.
way.
But the problem is, there's also a state law that says the bus can't sit in the
Idle.
driveway and idle, so that means when the bus comes up, it's not a problem in the afternoon, but when the bus pulls in the morning full of students, they can't shut the bus off until they go back and push the button, and I don't think you want to leave the bus running and walk back if it's full of students. But there is a safety device, which we actually talked about potentially putting on the new buses. So we'll take a look at this.
All right.
The other thing I suggest is on the second one, the one about contract, is just make it clear that it's contract student transportation services.
Yeah.
And the school system will contract for special education and supplementary transportation services.
Okay.
And
So
then
that
the
will
rest of
stay
it-
as is, and it will say what you
Say-
contracted.
The second paragraph, the school system will contract for special education and supplementary. Because it was indicated, sometimes you have to go to the contract company for field trip buses or athletic teams because all the other buses are tied up.
You just add as needed to the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't need to spell out special education, or the others just say as needed?
Right.
Okay.
And then the rest of it can stay because that's how you do it.
You're going to go through all those, Paul, so that
Yes,
moves us
I'll
to
go through
EF,
these and rewrite these, yep.
hot lunch.
Are we up, just a question, to help Paul, do we need to have the bus transportation with the source from the elementary handbook, or are we going to put that in there? Does he, we
They're
expect it?
gonna read them all and combine them.
Okay.
And bring it back.
And I'm just, personally, I don't think you need that.
No, that's stated already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the,
Yeah, it says that everybody K-12 living more than a mile from the school riding
Right,
bus.
so we don't need this.
No, you
is
don't
what-
need this.
So we don't have to, One last thing for you have to look at, Paul.
All right.
And you also don't need the next one either, walkers and riders, because you've
Yes.
already set the limit,
Yeah.
1 mile.
But you want the exception, which is down the bottom.
Right.
Exception to these guidelines, right, the way that's written down.
Bless you.
So does that get us to EF? Hot lunch?
Yeah, it does,
Bus safety
because
program?
I think
I
you
thought he
guys
was
are
gonna
going to,
do
you're going
all
to go
those.
through all of them
All right.
and combine them, okay?
All the EEAECs and stuff?
Yep. All of them.
Aren't you lucky, Paul?
Actually, I think the mask ones were excellent, and because most of them, when you talk about the drug testing, all the, I think they're fine, you don't have to do anything.
And the conduct.
How about student transportation in private vehicles?
What's the letter?
EEAG.
Yes, I did have a question on this for the committee. It's very clear we're going to use school buses. We do, how do I say this? We have students who drive other students to school activities. And I'm not saying that we want to put a stop to that, but we have had parents who have, on occasion, for instance, given rides to cheerleaders and to other football players, okay? I think we want to be very clear in this policy, and number two, we need to have a system in place and communicate that this is in fact our policy. I was told there was a situation where in order to attend an event, and I don't think a coach or somebody, an employee should ever be put in that position, but they were actually, the only way they could get the members of the team there is that they were being driven by parents. So I think this is something that we really need to make sure, if this is in fact, and I think we do want this, and we need to figure out a way how to implement this because this policy isn't always being carried out. You have music kids who may be transported by other parents, okay? Because that's the only way to get the equipment over to the field. So do we have assigned, if we say this, we have to be ready to implement this and to communicate this. Because this says to me they have to prove that they have the correct amount of liability insurance, and I think that's important.
Well, I guess the question I would have is 100,000, 300,000 is pretty low liability if you're going to be carrying
Yeah.
students. I mean, I don't know when that was written, but,
It's what the minimum is
Yeah.
to carry insurance, so.
right, and I just, if you're going to be carrying students,
I mean, you could set the limit at any number you want.
right.
Debbie, what did you have?
That if school busing use for transportation is going to be required, then those activities now have to pay for those school buses to run, right?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure this doesn't become an unfunded mandate
No.
to programs that don't have the money to do that.
No.
Well, the preference is to use school buses, but what this is saying is that if they're not available, private vehicles can be used. Now, right now, the practice is that people use their private vehicles, but there's no sanction, I guess, or it's kind of, wink, wink kind of practice that is going on. The dilemma is always going to be that if a parent feels, or if a student gets injured and the parent assumes the child was getting to the activity in a bus and finds out they're riding in a private vehicle, the first question they're going to ask you is who approved that?
Yeah.
And why wasn't I notified?
Yeah, I've had parents actually ask me that.
Jeff, do you ever have anybody
just-
going off to something, in anything other than a school bus?
Yeah, a common one might be 2 or 3 kids going with the student council advisor to a conference, let's say.
Okay.
And so we get parent permission slips
Yeah.
to authorize that they go with the teacher.
Okay.
I'm sure there's many going on that I'm none the wiser of as well.
Those are typically the activities that do it the right way.
Yeah.
And what generally happens, it's the ones that it's an ongoing type of thing. Like hockey is consistently the one that generally, because the rink isn't attached to the school,
Right.
And
So how are you gonna
you
get?
have to get to practices, and generally buses aren't provided to take the kids to and from practice, because the practice might be at 6 a.m.
Yeah.
Track
And-
is
yeah,
another example
yeah.
in the afternoon, because they practice.
Particularly
already
winter
at home.
track, they might be going
The summer.
somewhere else. So
Friday
They get,
football.
Friday
Yeah,
football.
music.
Go down to their
percussions.
practices, they'll go down and do a walkthrough at the football field on Friday before the game. So they may do a walkthrough either Thursday or Friday at the Ahern Field. Same thing.
But are we responsible for transporting, or are they responsible for getting to that point? And at that point, our responsibility begins. You know,
think
whether
that's
a golf
discussed.
team going to the
That's what we need
golf
to know.
course, yeah.
Okay.
I think the
Music,
problem lies
we
is that the
provide a
football
bus.
field is not here.
Right.
So they have to get there somehow. It's the same thing as them getting here. They're just going there instead.
Right.
So I don't, if they were going to the game, then come here, everybody gets on a bus and they go down there, this type of thing. But if you're going to practice, you could be going to practice any place. So I like the idea of having this, but this, it
But in the
doesn't,
case of like if the football field's not attached,
yeah,
if you've made the determination that they are responsible to get from here to there,
yeah,
then the parents know that.
yeah.
So that's you've already alerted them to the fact that you will not be providing transportation from point A to point B. So they're on their own to get to.
Jeff,
I
what
don't know
happens
if
with a
we can do
football
that.
game? Do they come here, get on the bus and go there, or do they go to the Ahern School and get on
They
the
go to
bus?
the IGO.
IGO, and the
And then we
IGO.
bus them.
Okay,
The only thing is just, and then when they practice out here. So they walk to the IGO, dress, and then come down to the field
Okay.
and practice 4
Then
days a
go back.
week.
It's
But if they
okay.
do a walkthrough, they want to be at the field,
No, we have no
so
locker
before a
rooms.
home game. So
Our locker rooms aren't enough to have the shoulder pads fit. So, but I'm not worried about football, it's the music program. And even when we have the bus for music, the percussions don't fit on the bus.
yeah, but
So-
they don't, the kids aren't,
The
they're
kids-
being transported by somebody, but not necessarily,
Okay, but there, in some cases, some of the kids may drive, they may sometimes be transported by parents. We've had other competing teams who have been transported by
no,
parents
they
and or
transport
coach.
you transport the equipment, not the kids.
No, they meet at the Ahern
Yeah.
for the band, for the games here.
No, I'm talking about when you go off to a music festival and you have to
See, I
transport
have
equipment.
no students and I will never.
Yeah, you don't have students in the car, you're just
Never.
transporting the stuff, you're not
Never.
transporting the
Absolutely
kids. The kids get on the bus and go.
Right.
You know,
Right.
you people have spent your lives transporting equipment, but not kids.
Right. No students.
I'm not suggesting that either of you would, but I have
No,
seen,
that's not-
I have seen where there,
During the
my
summer,
own
when they go
son,
to the
who was in
summer-
percussion, was never, he was
during
in
the
fact
summer when they go to
transported by
the
another
South Shore
parent.
Conservatory, that's an extracurricular activity.
Yeah.
But,
Well, in the summer.
However we want to do it,
oh, the
this is a
percussion
real,
truck,
yeah, this is a real issue, yeah.
that
See, I'm just saying, this is a great policy, but this is going to be a problem for us. And either we've got to communicate it, or we've got to make sure it's seamless, because we do have situations in where a parent may inadvertently be giving a ride to somebody, doing the right thing, and they're not, we need to, if this is what we want, and I think it is, we need to make sure this gets implemented.
Any type of transportation we have, if there is anyone outside of the school system, it usually requires a permission slip. So I guess the first thing, is the committee comfortable with the fact that none of our students would be traveling without permission slips?
Correct.
Right.
So the issue, I think, is there an expectation that we're providing a bus? And if the expectation is that we're not providing the bus, then this wouldn't apply, I think.
that's what Mr. Hines said.
Well,
Right.
yeah, generally speaking, I use the example of if someone was expecting their child to ride in a bus and they're not.
Yeah.
But again, if the expectation now is that they are going to be transported in private vehicles, you do have some liability
Liability.
as to ensuring that the people that,
Right. So I'll give you an example.
those people should be Cory checked, they should make sure they have enough liability insurance and so forth.
We transported a bus for the weekend for the wrestling team to Lowell for a tournament. There ended up being 1 or 2 students that went to the next level, but it was in Connecticut.
Yeah.
It would have been $1,000 to run the bus for 2
Yep.
kids. so we said we weren't gonna do it, then permission slips were done,
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
correct?
Yeah.
So the
and
parents
that's-
knew
Yep.
that
That
their
was
child,
not
they
gonna-
signed saying, yes, I acknowledge
Yep.
my child is
Yeah.
going with
Wasn't one that.
So-
whoever.
Right.
So that takes care of all of number 3 right there.
Right.
Yeah.
And then all you'd have to do is make sure the person who was driving was safe to be a driver.
And we'll start a statement to that effect, yeah, that covers it.
It usually happens like around Foxborough or something where you might send 3 kids
Yeah.
somewhere, so it might be the music director and 3 kids. You're not gonna get a bus for that.
So do we
Generally
literally have to have a file of potential parental drivers that follow those conditions? Like, we have people come in the building, we get Corey checks, we
Yeah.
know that they're Corey's, or is that the same thing we need to do in a case like this?
In those cases where you know you're gonna be using private transportation, I'd say yes.
Yeah.
But is the private transportation generally the coach in the examples we've been using?
The advisor or coach in most instances.
So
Now,
they're already
let's say
Corey.
They've already
let's say
been
there's
Corey.
let's say there's
Right.
2 cars required, there's 8 kids going, 7 kids going, then it might be a parent, which would, again, fall into the...
So you'd have to draw on a parent volunteer who's already been quarried
Yeah.
if it was something that's happening.
But
Or
if it-
has the proper
Right.
insurance piece as well.
Right, but if it was a parent, they wouldn't necessarily be quarried.
Right. Right.
And that would fall under direct, unsupervised contact with students.
Yeah, so therefore they'll have to be.
Isn't there something under the Corey that if it's on an emergency basis?
For taxi drivers.
That only covers taxi drivers?
Yeah.
Okay, so that
And
any
this is
parent should
planned,
drive.
so it's
No,
gotta be-
any
There's no
parent-
exemption for volunteers.
No.
Okay, so the last sentence under 3 will say, and the parents must be, all parents will be Corey then.
No, this is, number 3 is talking about
Yeah.
parents of students to be transported will be fully informed
gotta
as to
have
the
to
means
be.
of transportation, it's like the permission slip.
Okay,
I think
fair
you should
enough.
put it,
You're
if you're gonna
saying
put
all
the Corey,
parents,
put it
yeah.
under number 2.
Yeah.
The owner of the vehicle being used in transporting students must file evidence, whatever, of liability and appropriate Corey.
Yep,
But what do you do if, as
Okay.
a result, Paul just described wrestling, and they decide that now it's going to go the next day someplace else, it's a weekend, and you need 2 parents to help transport the kids, they're not going to get a Corey that quickly, so do you
Well-
tell the kids they can't participate?
Well, I think what you've got to do at the beginning of the season, make sure that you have all these checks
When you
and
can pull
balances
the
in
kids,
place.
the students' parents.
Yeah,
The parent supervising their own child doesn't need to be
Yeah.
Corey.
Correct.
if they have
But
another
could they
kid,
take the neighbor kid with them? Theoretically, no.
theoretically, no.
Can the neighbor give permission to have their child drive with their next-door neighbor to the wrestling match?
That's what we would,
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
Right, so then you would waive the Corey in that case.
You can't waive the
Can't waive the
Corey.
Corey.
Okay, so then it doesn't matter. So
No.
if my next-door neighbor's driving, and I'm trying to go with him, and he's not Coreyed, I can't go with him.
That's right.
So then you either have to get a Corey driver, or they can't go to the event.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or have their parent drive them to the event.
Right.
What if there were 2 adults?
If one of them's Corey. But they'd have to be in the same car.
it's a problem.
It
This
is a
talking point.
problem. I think you're going to have to talk it through, and figure out what the right answer is.
I mean, some districts get so frustrated that they simply banned all use of private vehicles.
Yeah.
Under no circumstances will students be transported.
And
But
we
they
know-
also had a whole bunch of those little 10-passenger vans, too.
Yeah, that they
which
could
are-
use.
Which are issues in Massachusetts anyway, but.
this is excellent, we just need to be clear, because we've gotten into an area where if we were to implement this, we would be in violation of our own policy very early on. So, and I think it's worthwhile.
Well, under number 2, add the Corey part
Yep.
to it, okay?
I think you also, instead, the owner of the vehicle, the
Yeah.
owner/driver.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Okay. Hot lunch program.
We refer to the snack bar. Is that what we still have? A
We have
snack
a
bar?
health bar now?
Yeah, because of
Yeah.
the change in the wellness policy.
I'm not sure that we need the Foxborough one if we go with Mass.
Yeah.
The Mass is behind it. Oh, no, there's 2 behind
No,
it.
there's 2
I don't think we
behind
need either of the 2 Foxborough, because I think Mass did it, they talk about free and reduced price. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah, because, yeah,
They've kept it
Yeah.
very generic.
yeah.
Yeah.
In which the school committee will approve a policy statement, this would be the policy statement.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're saying, we don't need the old hot lunch program.
No, we don't.
That's what I,
So no and no.
so that's,
Okay. Oh my God, we made it to E. Okay, quick, F.
told you we would. FA.
All right, let's do F quick. We've got a half an hour.
I think it's perfect.
These two, I think, are out.
Facilities development goal, what do you think, Mike? I thought it was a beautiful thing. Oh,
Just one typo on FA-E.
Hold on, I'm trying to catch up.
and I would say,
FA,
Yeah.
did we say all yes to that
Yes.
already?
Mike, do you have a problem with it?
No.
He likes it, okay.
One typo on FA-E.
Yep.
Just every new school which is to be constructed?
Yep.
Doesn't make
okay.
sense.
And my only question here, because it's facility development goals, and then you have facilities development goals. And this is really a continuation
Yeah.
of the first page. Can we just put, there's plenty of room, can we just put FAE, make that as part of FA?
Well, the reason it's there is it's an exhibit,
Yeah,
and it's because this is the requirement under the Massachusetts regulations concerning Title IX about equal facilities and stuff.
so you do need two
So
separate.
this,
But you're
but it's not your-
referring to the
you see, it's
same
not-
legal
but it's
reference.
not your policy,
Yeah.
that's the whole thing.
Okay.
This is right out of the standards. It's like if you have a boys' room with 2 toilets and 2 urinals, you have to have a girls' room with 4 units.
Okay, so,
Equal.
under the legal reference, are you going to cite that? Because the legal reference you have listed is the
Right.
same for
I
both.
understand. But that's why this is an exhibit, is because it's right out of that regulation.
So it's not going to be here, it's going to be under the exhibit
Yes.
section?
Yes.
Okay, okey dokey. Thank you for reminding me of that.
Understand that? Facilities planning.
Beautiful
I had
instrument.
a question, why
We are going to have to change the legal reference on the bottom because of the new school buildings assistance component and their regulations as well.
So change the reference, okay.
I just had a question about the town manager.
Well,
I have a
that's,
question here, too. Yeah, the town manager creates a school building. We don't have a school building committee. We have a permanent municipal planning and building committee.
okay.
And it
Yeah.
does all
All
of
of
the
it.
public buildings in
Including
the town,
schools.
including
Right.
schools.
Yeah.
So,
So
and that,
So what's the name of it?
it's the Permanent Municipal Planning and Building Committee.
Yeah, you're right.
They would be overseeing the $13 million renovation of high school.
Correct.
Yes.
Is it
But
building?
the problem there is, we would all have to be approved
Right,
by
the town.
MASB.
MASB.
Right,
You know,
correct.
that's what they say.
Right.
And
Yeah.
approved.
so who appoints the members of the,
Town manager.
All right, so the-
town, we do.
so the town has created a permanent municipal planning and building committee. The town manager appoints the members of this committee, and then this committee
Overseas.
oversees or
Actually, I think
acts as
it's-
the administrative authority for,
I think it's the town manager and the selectmen.
to
I think
join
the
the plan?
selectmen have to vote on approval for the building committee.
You're right.
So I think it's town manager and selectmen.
All right, why don't we just check on that?
Yeah, I'm not
If you
sure.
can, Mike, just
Can
ask
you
him,
leave
get it
that?
to him.
Yeah.
Mike will check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we move on, you said you're going to update that with the
Right,
school
Right,
building
because
authority? 'Cause
these
they came out with
regulations have been superseded.
yeah.
But it won't change.
But it won't affect the
it won't
context of
change
the policy, it's
content.
just that the legal reference is different. Trying to think what the number is. I think it's in here. Well, the 70B reference is right, but the regulation reference isn't. Closing of school buildings. This is an existing Foxborough policy.
I like the way Mass did it.
Yeah,
I like the
me too.
fact that you called it retirement of facilities.
Yeah.
I like that.
Let's
Couldn't
see
find anything
here.
that was missing.
So no on the first one and okay on the second one, yeah.
Okay. FF, naming.
I like it.
Now, is it true that a high school can't be named after anybody? No? So you could, all of our schools have names, with the exception of the high school.
Generally speaking.
And I
the
thought
high
someone
school-
had told me the high schools could not be named after an individual. I was just trying to verify. So if somebody wanted to donate $13 million for the renovation, and in return for that, they wanted the high school named after them, we could do that.
Robert Kraft.
No, I would.
Bill Gates.
No, there's a lot of high schools that have been named after
Yeah.
individual
Okay.
people.
All right.
This policy pertain to, say, a field, like North Attleboro has Beaupre Field.
Who has jurisdiction over the grounds?
The school
The
committee.
school department?
No,
The school grounds, or is it
school
is
has
it
some,
rec?
recreation has others, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but when it's a school, it's, we have the jurisdiction.
Well, if you take the
if it's a
football
school,
field.
But if you say, take, say, the football field, or the soccer field, and actually, we do. We've
Yeah,
named the
we've
Hershey
named them.
Field.
Yeah,
We've named
Friends Field.
Friends Field.
Yeah.
There are fields named.
and it's
I
always,
mean,
because
ours
it's come
is
up to the
just-
school committee when I'm
Ours
gone.
is just the football field.
Yeah.
I mean,
Is the football field part of a comp, like a?
It's either her
it's
and.
part of our complex, yes, with the track.
Right.
and
So if someone wanted to spend $1 million to put that special turf in, we could rename
We could name
Yes.
it.
to the such and such a football.
Jonathan Kraft.
Would it have to spell out in here? I mean,
Well, this is the naming of new facilities, so I don't think, anybody who's, I'll give you for instance, the music department, well, the music boosters club wanted us to rename the auditorium at one point. That definitely falls within the purview of the school committee to
Yeah.
take it
Anything-
under consideration. and-
So without a doubt, anything inside the four walls, so to speak.
Yeah, or on the compound. If somebody appealed to the school committee, then we can vote it up or down.
Right. But I think Mike's question was, says naming of a school. Should we say of a school, a field, part of a school, a room, an auditorium? I mean, you were trying to make it
Right,
more
exactly.
generic.
A school
That
or,
was just a question.
Right.
Well, but it would be separate from this, because this is just naming new facilities.
Right, but the question is, rather than adding another policy, could you make this policy one that's tailored towards either new facilities or existing facilities or existing
that's my
wings?
question,
All
Larry.
right,
I
how
love
about-
this
how
for
about
new
add under-
facilities, but I think Mike is right. We should say naming a school other new facilities.
No,
Okay,
because
because this
it's-
is new. The second one, and I don't know if we want to do it, I think we do, because every so often we get requests to rename pieces of.
That's what we were just
and
talking
that's a
about.
second policy.
So put it under,
I actually have samples of that. You can look at.
okay, why don't you bring
Great.
that?
We had one that was circulated, Mark, that was what, three, or a year ago, when the aspect of the renaming of the auditorium came up, and that was,
I
that,
just said that.
what?
That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But there was we wrote something. It was based on Vin Igo, and what he had, it wasn't in
we
the
didn't write
policy, but we
anything.
had a, Mark, that's not what I'm saying. It was shared with us, there was a write-up that Vin had done, okay? And we used that to say we wouldn't, and we told people that we weren't totally comfortable with the renaming, and then the renaming was withdrawn. Would that be helpful for Jim in, with
Yeah,
his?
let's see what he has, because
Okay, so Jim will.
Jim will give us.
Did you hear I don't know if you followed the Pembroke story? When Pembroke separated from Silver Lake, they
Yeah,
had to they created their own new district, and one of the things they did is they took over control of what used to be the junior high, made it their high school, and they went through this complete renovation project. Well, unknown to the current school committee members, the media center actually moved. It physically moved from one section of the building to another section of the building. So anything that was in it didn't necessarily follow from one place,
Right.
you know, plaques and whatever, didn't necessarily follow. So there was the long-term librarian there passed away, and they made, somebody brought the motion to the school committee to name, I'm sorry, that's not correct. The superintendent was retiring, and the school committee thought it'd be a good idea because she oversaw the creation of the school district to name this new library after the superintendent. And they did that. Lo and behold, the library already had been named. And it was named after someone who was a long-term employee, long-term librarian, and it had been the library for 20 years. So so they actually had to rescind naming the library after this. They named something else after her. But
When you run into it, it's unfortunate.
so that was a question of, do you know what everything is named?
All right, so we made it.
Is this library named after anybody?
I don't think so.
No, the media center.
Yeah.
No, I don't think we have anything named after anyone in any of our buildings that I know of.
Inside the buildings?
Is
Just
the
nothing
auditorium
inside.
named
Yes, we
after
do.
anybody?
Yes, we do. At the Ahern School, the library is in honor of Bill Palladino. There's a plaque inside there. Only reason I know that is because I saw it on my
that
way
what the
out the other
auditorium-
day.
Is the auditorium here named
gym?
after anybody? The gym?
Nope,
Wow.
we have options.
Yeah.
We have some options.
Revenue enhancer.
That, I have my thought, we better have a policy, because we'll get requests again, so at least we'll have something to
Naming
follow.
rights.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, that's
maybe-
big business these days.
Yeah, but you know
It's one-time
something?
revenue.
There was something in the newspaper about the legislature jumping in on that, and that they did.
That was advertising.
Yeah, advertising.
That's different.
Can't do it. All right. So we're through for tonight?
I don't think so.
Excuse me?
I would think so.
Oh, I thought you said I didn't think so. I was like,
thought you said.
all right, so we'll have.
Did you
G-
not have it?
No, I put it in another
Because he didn't
document.
have it.
No, Paul gave it to us.
All
I
right,
have it. I
before
saved
we
it.
do that, there are some things in G, and I asked Paul to bring me a copy of the teacher's contract.
I left two things for you on the floor of my office.
Okay.
I just realized.
I have
Follow
one,
me, I'll give it
no,
to
I
you.
have one in my office. I just, because if we were going to do section G tonight, I wanted to have one here with me. There are policies that were submitted to you in section G, in particular around leaves of absences
Yeah.
and some things that are typically contract, but
Where was I?
since principals are no longer in collective bargaining agreements, and other administrators are on individual contracts, and there may even be some people in central office that don't work under a contract. I don't know, because each district is different. If, say, the secretaries at the central office, if they're not in a union and they're on individual contracts, if they don't have it in their contract about sick leave or vacation or whatever, the town accountant really can't pay them unless you have a policy in place that grants them that benefit. So that's why those policies are there. And I think what you'll find is that after, I didn't know we were going to, I thought maybe we'd get to G tonight, so I wanted to have the contract here, but now I'll be ready for it when we do meet. I'll have all the contracts here, and I'll be able to tell you, no, this is in this contract, this is in this contract, so you don't need it in policy. So that section G is going to whittle down a lot.
The other thing is on the Family Leave Act, there's
It's
special
twice.
attention. Yeah, it's in the contracts, as part of the bargaining.
But you still have to have the
general
that
family.
one paragraph statement.
Yeah.
You have to publish that.
Yeah.
You don't need the 8 pages that follow it, but I give them to you because some people don't know. They see family and medical leave and they don't know what it is,
Yeah.
believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Well, if you don't have to use it, it doesn't.
Yeah.
You mean employees don't know?
No, just in people, when I'm reviewing policy books with them.
I don't understand it.
It's like, they'll see the one page, well, what's the Family and Medical Leave Act? And that's why the 8 pages are there. It's like a reference for them. But whether it remains in your policy book or not is up to you.
Something else.
But also something else. Oh, and so a lot of, because you'll see some redundancy in GC and GD. Again, GC is for what typically, it's referred to as professional staff, but it's typically certified. Those are the employees working under licenses. And support staff would be secretaries, custodians, bus drivers. Although they might be in unions, they're not certified, so to speak, or licensed.
Did I give you my G? Oh, mine is-
Okay?
I'll move to adjourn.
Who wants a
I'll
second?
second it, I think.
What did you do?
Everybody,
I have gifts.
everybody got a G, as long as it's less than $50. Is everything?
Have we done conflict of interest yet?
At the last meeting, we talked about Robert's rules.
Right, and a little pocket version.
No, I knew it, I had it.
Pocket versions.
I went through it at home.
Yeah, we got those, I think, in our, but I'll take another copy.
There's plenty.
Oh, thank you.
That's great.
It's 2 books.
Oh, for that.
This is the full version of Robert's rules. Okay?
Senator Kennedy has it memorized, I understand.
This should be at your meeting at all times,
Oh, here it is.
right? So I don't know if there's a box that you have that you bring to all the meetings. It's got the nameplates and all that other stuff, the gavel or whatever.
That's kept in the back
Well, we leave
room.
it in
This should be with that.
Okay.
All right? And this, the chair should take a look at,
All right.
just to give an idea of, have some sort of understanding of the This is the Cliff Notes version. It's
Right.
real easy. You just open it up to the middle and look at the tabs.
Oh, okay, great,
We have one for that. Do we
Oh.
have- Oh, you've got it. Here.
thank you.
I told you I'd bring gifts.
We've got enough for Beth, right? We're going in there for
Bet you covered.
class, we don't have hard.
I thought you were doing a Sunday evening.
I'm gonna tell Chris I did.
I had, yeah, there's a motion,
That
there's
way,
a
when
second.
you run your
I'll
school
call the
policy,
question.
you have your parliamentary procedure.
Roll call. Is this second?
Good night.
Good night.
No, it's not executive.